Welcome to tonight's relaxing sleep story. Find a quiet place, rest your head, and let your thoughts become softer with every breath. Tonight, we return to a love that once felt endless. A love remembered through old rooms, quiet rain, and a letter that was never meant to be found. If stories like this help you relax, sleep, or simply escape the noise of the day, please subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more peaceful bedtime stories, nostalgic love stories, and calming tales for the heart. Now, close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let tonight's story begin. A love letter never sent. When America found the letter, it was hidden behind the wooden drawer of an old writing desk, folded so carefully that it looked less like paper and more like something that had been buried alive. The desk had belonged to Daniel, the boy she had loved when the world was young, before time became fast, before phones remembered everything, before people stopped waiting by windows for footsteps that never came. She knew his handwriting before she read a single word. The long, quiet lines, the dark ink pressed too deeply into the paper, the small curve he always made at the end of her name, as if even writing it was a way of holding her. Amelia sat on the floor of the empty house, the afternoon rain whispering against the glass. And as she opened the letter that Daniel had never sent, she understood, with a pain so gentle it almost felt like peace, that the man she had spent 30 years trying to forget had never truly left her at all. It began in the summer of 1991, in a small coastal town called Morro Bay. Back then, the town was the kind of place where mornings smelled of salt, warm bread, and wet stone. Fishermen still mended their nets by hand. Bicycles leaned outside cafes without locks. Old women swept their doorsteps before sunrise, and in the evenings, music drifted from open windows like a memory looking for somewhere to rest. Amelia was 19 that summer. She worked in her grandmother's bookshop near the harbor, a narrow little place with green shutters, dusty shelves, and a bell above the door that rang softly whenever someone entered. The shop sold old novels, postcards, maps, notebooks, fountain pens, and second-hand poetry books with other people's names written inside them. Amelia loved those names most of all. She liked to imagine who they had belonged to. A woman named Clara, who underlined sad sentences. A man named Thomas, who folded pages instead of using bookmarks. A girl named Elise, who wrote forever beside a poem about spring. Amelia believed books remembered people better than people remembered themselves. Her grandmother, Rose, used to say Amelia had the soul of someone born in the wrong century. "You think too much," Rose would tell her, standing behind the counter with her silver hair pinned high. "One day thinking will make you lonely." But Amelia only smiled. Loneliness did not frighten her then. She was young enough to think it was romantic. Daniel arrived in Morro Bay on the last train of June. He was 21, with dark hair, quiet eyes, and a leather bag that looked older than he was. He came into the bookshop during a soft afternoon rain, shaking water from his jacket and apologizing as if the weather had been his fault. The bell above the door rang. Amelia looked up from the book she was reading. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There are meetings in life that do not feel like beginnings. They feel like remembering. As if your heart has been expecting someone your mind has never known. Daniel smiled first. "I'm looking for a book," he said. Amelia glanced around the shop. "That's convenient." He laughed quietly, and she loved the sound before she knew she loved anything else about him. "What kind of book?" she asked. "One that makes time slow down." Amelia closed her own book,
and studied him more carefully. Outside, rain slipped down the window in silver lines. Behind him, the harbor looked gray and distant. He stood there like a sentence she had not finished reading. "That's a dangerous request," she said. "Why?" "Because if I find you the right one, you may never leave." Daniel looked at her then. Not quickly, not boldly, gently, as though he had found something fragile and did not want to frighten it.
"Maybe I came here because I was tired of leaving." She gave him a worn copy of a poetry book with a blue cloth cover. He paid for it with coins, thanked her twice, and left. But the next day, he came back, and the day after that. At first he said it was because the rain had returned, then because he needed postcards, then because he wanted another book, then because the bookshop had better coffee than the cafe across the street, which was not true because the bookshop did not sell coffee. Eventually, Amelia stopped asking why he came. Daniel stopped pretending there was a reason. He had come to Marrow Bay to help restore the old lighthouse at the end of the cliffs. His uncle had taken the contract, and Daniel had agreed to work for the summer before going to the city in September. He was supposed to study architecture. He was supposed to become practical, successful, respectable. But Daniel drew houses the way musicians play sad songs. He sketched windows with longing, doors with hesitation, staircases as if they led somewhere more important than an upper floor. Amelia noticed this when he left his notebook open on the counter one afternoon. "You draw like buildings are alive," she said. Daniel looked embarrassed and tried to close the notebook, but she placed her hand over it. "No, leave it." He did. In the sketch, he had drawn the bookshop from across the street, the green shutters, the hanging sign, the door, the window, and inside the window, though only faintly, a girl sitting behind the counter with her chin resting on her hand. Amelia looked up at him. "That's me." "Yes." "You drew me very small." "I didn't want you to notice." "I noticed." "I know." His face turned red, and Amelia smiled in a way that made him look down. That was how love began for them. Not with a kiss, not with a confession, but with a drawing. A small girl inside a window, waiting in a shop full of forgotten books. By July, Daniel knew where Amelia kept the extra key, which floorboard near the poetry shelf creaked, and which chair by the window was hers. Amelia knew he hated cherries, but ate them anyway because his mother loved them. She knew he wrote with his left hand. She knew he grew quiet whenever someone mentioned fathers. He told her eventually. His father had left when Daniel was 10. Not dramatically, not with shouting or broken plates. One morning he simply packed a suitcase and told Daniel's mother he needed a different life. Daniel had spent years wondering what kind of life was worth abandoning the people who loved you. "That is why I draw houses," he said one evening as they sat outside the closed bookshop, sharing bread and cheese from a paper bag. "I think I'm always trying to design one that no one wants to leave." Amelia looked at him. "And have you?" He shook his head. "Not yet." The sun was setting behind the harbor. Boats rocked softly in the water. Somewhere, a radio played an old song through static. Amelia rested her shoulder against his. "Maybe houses are not what make people stay." Daniel turned toward her. "What does?" She wanted to say love, but she was too shy then, so she said, "Good windows." He laughed, and the sound went into her memory forever. They spent that summer as if time had been made especially for them. Mornings belonged to work, afternoons belonged to the sea, evenings belonged to walking. They walked everywhere, along the harbor where ropes knocked gently against wooden posts,
through narrow streets where laundry hung between balconies, up the hill to the lighthouse, where Daniel's hands were always dusted white from stone and plaster, down to the beach at dusk, when the water turned gold and the sky looked too beautiful to be trusted. Sometimes they spoke for hours. Sometimes they said almost nothing. Love, when it is young and true, does not always need language. It can live for a while inside glances, footsteps, and the quiet agreement to keep walking side by side. One evening, Daniel brought Amelia to the lighthouse after everyone else had left. The stairs inside curved upward in a tight spiral. The walls smelled of old stone and sea wind. Amelia lifted her dress slightly as she climbed, whenever Daniel told her to be careful. At the top, the town spread below them like a painting. The harbor, the bookshop, the church tower, the red roofs, the small train station beyond the olive trees. The sea opened endlessly in front of them, blue and silver beneath the fading sun. Daniel stood beside her, nervous in a way she had never seen. "What?" Amelia asked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key.
"A key?" "To the lighthouse door."
"Daniel, did you steal this?"
"No," he said quickly.
"Borrowed forever."
Amelia laughed. He placed it in her hand. "So you can come here whenever you want," he said, "even after I leave." The word leave made the air change. September was still far away, but not far enough. Amelia closed her fingers around the key. "I don't want to come here after you leave." Daniel looked at her. The wind moved between them. "Then I won't leave." She smiled, but gently. "You say that now. I mean it now. What about September? What about it? You have the city, university, your life." Daniel looked out over the water. "This feels like my life." Amelia did not answer, because for the first time, she was afraid of how much she wanted to believe him. The first time he kissed her, it was raining. Not heavy rain, soft summer rain, the kind that makes the streets shine and turns the world into a secret. They were closing the bookshop together. Rose had gone home early with a headache, trusting Daniel enough by then to leave him carrying boxes and moving ladders. Amelia was locking the front door when thunder rolled far away over the sea. Daniel stood beneath the awning, holding 2 books under his jacket to keep them dry. "You'll ruin your shirt," Amelia said. "They're first editions." "You care more about old books than yourself?" "Today, yes." She stepped closer and took the books from him. Rain dripped from his hair. His face was inches from hers. The street around them was empty. "Amelia," he said. She had heard her name all her life, from her grandmother, from neighbors, from school teachers, from customers. But in Daniel's voice, it sounded like something discovered. "Yes? I think..." He stopped. "What?" "I think I have been waiting for you longer than I knew." The rain grew softer. Amelia's heart beat so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. Then he kissed her, and the whole town seemed to hold its breath. After that, they were no longer careful. Daniel kissed her in the quiet aisle between poetry and travel. Amelia slipped notes into his jacket pockets. He drew her hands, her face, the curve of her hair when she bent over a page. She kept his sketches under her mattress, tied with blue ribbon, as if they were letters from another life. They made promises in ordinary places. At the bakery, he promised to build her a house with a room just for books. At the beach, she promised to read to him when he became too old to see. At the lighthouse, he promised they would never become strangers.
At the train station, watching other people depart, she promised she would never let him leave without saying goodbye. But promises made in summer do not always know what autumn will ask of them. In August, Daniel began to receive letters from the city. Amelia saw them tucked into his bag, stamped with official seals. He read them alone, and each time, something in him seemed to fold inward. "What is it?" she asked one evening. They were sitting behind the bookshop, where Rose kept pots of rosemary and basil. The air smelled warm and green. "Nothing. Daniel." He looked at her with tired eyes. "My uncle wrote to my mother." "About what?" "About us." Amelia's stomach tightened. "And?" "And she wants me home." "Because of me?" "Because of everything." He sighed. "She says I'm throwing away my future." "Are you?" "No." But the answer came too quickly. Amelia looked down at her hands. Daniel reached for them. "Listen to me. I don't want the city if it means losing this." "This?" she whispered. "You." She wanted to believe that love could be enough. Everyone wants to believe that at least once. That love can silence fear. That love can pay debts. That love can turn parents gentle, make distance small, make money unnecessary, make the future bend. But life is not always cruel in loud ways. Sometimes it is cruel through letters, through responsibilities, through the quiet pressure of other people's expectations, through the knowledge that loving someone does not mean you know how to keep them. Near the end of August, Rose fell ill. At first it seemed like exhaustion, then fever, then weakness that did not pass. The doctor came twice, then a third time with a serious face. Amelia began sleeping in a chair beside her grandmother's bed, waking at every cough, every breath, every movement in the dark.
Daniel came every day. He brought soup, he cleaned the bookshop, he carried boxes, he repaired the loose shelf near the window. He sat with Rose when Amelia needed air. One afternoon, Amelia found them speaking quietly in the back room. Rose was pale, but her eyes were clear. Daniel stood beside her bed, holding his cap in both hands. When Amelia entered, they stopped. "What were you talking about?" she asked. Rose smiled weakly. "Old people things." "Daniel is not old." "He worries like an old man." Daniel looked away. Amelia thought nothing of it then. Later, she would remember that moment many times. The way Rose held Daniel's hand. The way he looked like someone being asked to carry something heavy. Rose died on the first day of September, just before dawn. The town came to the funeral. The baker, the fisherman, the postman. Old customers who had bought books from Rose for 30 years. The church was full of white flowers and quiet crying. Daniel stood behind Amelia with one hand on her shoulder. She did not cry during the service. Grief had made her still. She felt as if she were watching her own life from somewhere far away. Afterward, people came to the bookshop carrying food, condolences, and sentences that did not help. Rose had been a good woman. Rose had lived a full life. Rose was with the angels now. Amelia nodded. Daniel stayed. That evening, when everyone had gone, Amelia sat on the floor of the shop among stacks of unsorted books. "I don't know how to be here without her," she said. Daniel sat beside her. "You don't have to know tonight." "She raised me." "I know." "She gave me everything."
Daniel was quiet. Then she said the words that began the ending. "I can't leave Marrow Bay now." Daniel closed his eyes. September had arrived. His train to the city was in 3 days. They tried not to speak of it. For 2 days they moved around each other gently, as if the wrong word might break what remained. Daniel helped reopen the shop. Amelia wrote thank-you notes. Customers came in softly, speaking in whispers as though grief were asleep in the corner and they did not want to wake it. On the final night before Daniel's train, he asked Amelia to meet him at the lighthouse. She almost did not go. Some part of her already knew that whatever happened there would become a memory too sharp to touch. But near sunset, she took the brass key from her drawer and walked to the cliffs. Daniel was waiting at the top. The sky was lavender. The sea below was darkening. Wind moved through his hair. "I wrote to the university," he said. Amelia stopped. "I asked to delay for a year." Her heart lifted and hurt at the same time. "Daniel, I can stay. I can work here. The lighthouse contract may continue. The bookshop needs help. You need help." She looked at him, and for one beautiful second, life seemed merciful. Then reality returned. "And your mother? She'll be angry. And your future? You are in it." Amelia turned away because tears had come suddenly. Daniel stepped closer. "Look at me." She did. "I don't care if we are poor," he said. "I don't care if we live above the bookshop and eat bread for dinner. I don't care if people think I made a mistake." "But what if one day you do?" she asked. "I won't." "You don't know that." "I know I love you." "And I love you. That is why I can't let you stay." He stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I have already lost one person who gave up everything for me." "Rose didn't give up everything. She loved you. And she never left this town." Amelia wiped her face. "She had dreams too, Daniel. She wanted to travel. She wanted to see Paris. She wanted to study literature. But she stayed because family needed her. Because I needed her. And I watched the world become smaller around her." "You are not trapping me." "Not today. Not ever." "How can you promise that? How can you decide for me?" The question struck her deeply, because he was right. But fear has a way of dressing itself as kindness. Amelia believed she was saving him. Daniel believed she was abandoning them. Both were telling the truth from where they stood. The argument did not become loud. That was the worst part. No shouting, no cruelty, no dramatic goodbye. Only two people who loved each other standing in a lighthouse, unable to find a future where love did not cost one of them too much. At last, Daniel said, "Come with me then." Amelia looked at him. "To the city. The shop. Sell it. Close it. Keep it. We'll figure it out." "This place is all I have left of her." "No," Daniel said softly. "It is what she left you, not what she asked you to become." Amelia could not answer. He stepped back. The distance between them was small, but it felt like the beginning of years. "I leave tomorrow morning," he said. "I know." "If you come to the station, I'll wait." "Daniel, I'll wait until the last call." She looked down at the brass key in her hand. "And if I don't come?" His face changed. "Then I will understand." But he did not understand. Not then. Neither did she. The next morning, Amelia dressed before sunrise. She put on her blue coat, the one Daniel said made her look like winter had fallen in love with summer. She brushed her hair. She placed the lighthouse key in her pocket. She walked to the front door. Then she stopped. The bookshop behind her was quiet. Rose's chair was empty behind the counter. Dust floated in the gold light. On the desk lay unpaid bills, condolence cards, and a stack of books waiting to be priced. Amelia imagined leaving it all. Then she imagined Daniel at the station, his face when he saw her, his hand reaching for hers. The train pulling them toward a life neither of them could predict. She opened the door. The bell rang above her, and then the telephone rang. It was the doctor. There were documents Rose had left, debts Amelia had not known about. The shop was not fully paid for. There were decisions to make quickly, forms to sign, people to meet. The conversation lasted only 7 minutes, but sometimes 7 minutes is enough to alter a lifetime. By the time Amelia ran to the station, the platform was empty. The train was gone. She found no note, no message, no Daniel. Only a porter sweeping near the tracks. "Did the morning train leave on time?" she asked, breathless. 5 minutes late, he said. 5 minutes. She had missed him by 5 minutes. For years, Amelia would think about those 5 minutes. She would think about them while opening the shop in winter, while pricing books in spring, while watching young couples walk through Marrow Bay in summer. She would think about them whenever the train whistle sounded beyond the hills. 5 minutes. The smallest measurement of a broken heart. Daniel wrote once. At least, Amelia thought he did. A letter came 2 weeks later with a city postmark, but rain had damaged the ink. Only her name remained clear on the envelope. Inside, the paper was nearly unreadable. A few words survived. Amelia. Waited. Could not. Forgive me. Always. She wrote back the same day. Then again a week later. Then again in October. No answer came. By winter, she stopped. Not because she stopped loving him, but because unanswered letters become a kind of humiliation when held too long. People told her to move on. People always say that, as if love were furniture you could rearrange to make a room easier to live in. Amelia did move on, in the way people do. She opened the shop every morning. She paid the debts slowly. She learned accounts, repairs, taxes, and all the dull, brave things adults do to survive. She cut her hair. She bought new shoes. She smiled when neighbors asked how she was. Years passed. The town changed. The old cinema closed. The bakery became a restaurant. The train station was painted twice. Tourists began arriving with cameras smaller than their hands. The lighthouse became a historic site with visiting hours and a little sign that explained its history badly. Amelia never married. There were men, kind men, patient men. Men who brought flowers, fixed shelves, invited her to dinner, made her laugh once or twice. But none of them looked at her as though she were a sentence they had been waiting their whole life to read. So she remained. Not frozen, not bitter, just quietly unfinished. 30 years passed before Daniel's name returned to Marrow Bay. It happened through a lawyer. Amelia was 49 then, older than Rose had been when Amelia first believed she was old. Her hair had begun to silver at the temples. She wore reading glasses on a chain. The bookshop still stood, though now it had a small tea corner near the window and postcards printed from old photographs of the town. One rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. Not from Daniel. about Daniel.
The lawyer wrote that Mr. Daniel Hart had passed away after a brief illness. He had owned a small property in Morro Bay, purchased many years before but never occupied. Among his documents were instructions that the property should be transferred to Miss Amelia Vale, owner of Rose and Company Books. Amelia read the letter 3 times. Daniel had owned a house in Morro Bay? Why? Where? The address made her sit down. It was the old white cottage behind the lighthouse road. The one with blue shutters and a wild garden. The one Amelia had passed hundreds of times without knowing it belonged to him. She went the next morning. The cottage stood quiet beneath a gray sky. Ivy climbed one wall. The garden had grown wild with lavender, rosemary, and tall grass. The blue shutters were faded but still beautiful. The key from the lawyer turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, the air smelled of dust, old wood, and time. The rooms were nearly empty. A covered sofa, a small kitchen, a table, a bed frame upstairs. No photographs, no clothes, no sign that anyone had lived there. But in the front room, beside the window facing the sea, stood a wooden writing desk. Amelia walked toward it slowly. On the desk lay an old sketchbook. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The first page showed the bookshop, the second, the harbor, the third, the lighthouse, the fourth, Amelia at 19, sitting behind the counter with her chin resting on her hand. She turned page after page, Amelia laughing in the rain, Amelia on the cliff, Amelia reading beneath the window, Amelia holding the brass key. Amelia as he remembered her, young forever in graphite and paper. She sat there until the light began to fade. Then, while closing the bottom drawer, she noticed it did not slide correctly. Something was caught behind it. Amelia pulled gently. The drawer came loose. Behind it, wrapped in a piece of faded blue ribbon, was a letter. Her name was written on the front. Amelia, not Miss Vale, not dear friend. Amelia. She sank slowly to the floor. The rain began again outside, and at last, after 30 years, she opened the love letter Daniel had never sent. My Amelia, if this letter has found you, that it means I failed to be brave in the one way that mattered most. I have written this letter 3 times and destroyed it twice. Each version sounded either too proud or too wounded, and neither was the truth. The truth is quieter. The truth is that I loved you more gently than I knew how to explain, and I lost you in a way I have never understood how to forgive myself for. I waited at the station that morning. The train was late. 5 minutes. Can you believe that? 5 minutes, and still I thought the world was being kind to me. I stood on the platform and watched the road, certain you would appear. Every time footsteps came near, my heart rose like a foolish thing. You did not come. At first I was angry. I need to tell you that because love letters should not lie. I was angry in the way young men become angry when they are actually heartbroken. I told myself you had chosen the shop, chosen grief, chosen fear, chosen everything except me. But as the train began to move, I saw something that changed the shape of my life. Your grandmother's friend, Mr. Bell, was standing near the station office. He had come to send a parcel. He saw me watching the road and told me you had received a telephone call that morning. He said there were debts, documents, trouble with the shop. He said you had sounded frightened. And suddenly I understood. You had not abandoned me. Life had interrupted you. That should have made things simple. I should have stepped off the train at the next station, turned back and come to you.
I did not. That is the part I have carried all these years. I did not come back, not because I stopped loving you, because I was hurt enough to become proud, and proud enough to become foolish. When I reached the city, there was a letter from my mother waiting. She had taken ill, truly ill this time, not the kind of illness she used when she wanted me near. I stayed with her. Days became weeks, weeks became months. I wrote to you once, but I wrote badly. I was ashamed. I said too little. I posted it in rain. Then your letters came. Yes, Amelia, they came, every one. I read them until the folds wore soft. You asked why I had not answered. You asked if I was well. You asked if I hated you. You told me about Rose's debts, about the shop, about the first cold morning without her. You told me you had gone to the station and missed me by 5 minutes.
5 minutes. I have hated no number more. Why did I not answer? Because by then I had made a coward's prison for myself. I thought too much time had passed. I thought I had already hurt you beyond repair. I thought returning would open your wound again. And beneath all those noble thoughts was the smaller, uglier truth. I was afraid you would not want me anymore. Years passed. I studied. I worked. I became the kind of man people call successful when they do not know what he has failed to keep. I designed buildings, houses, hotels, libraries. Once a journalist asked why my buildings always had wide windows facing west. I told him I liked evening light. That was not the truth. The truth was that every window I ever drew was looking for Marrow Bay. Every house was the house I wanted to build for you. I came back once. It was winter. You were inside the bookshop, standing on a ladder, placing books on the top shelf. Your hair was shorter. You looked tired. You looked beautiful. There was a man at the counter making you laugh. I stood across the street for nearly 10 minutes. Then I left. I told myself you had found peace. I told myself love sometimes means not disturbing the life of the person you love. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was another excuse. Years later, I bought the white cottage near the lighthouse. Do you remember it? You once said it had the saddest garden in town because no one loved it properly. I bought it without knowing why at first. Then I understood. Some part of me had never stopped building the life we planned. I never lived there. I could not bear to. But I kept the key. I kept your letters. I kept the drawing of you in the shop window. I kept the brass lighthouse key you gave back to me on our last night, though I know you thought I did not notice. I noticed everything about you. Amelia, there is something I need you to know. You thought you were the one who stayed behind. But I stayed too. Not in Marrow Bay, not beside you, not in any way that matters to the outside world. But inside, I stayed 19 forever, standing in a bookshop doorway, listening to rain, watching a girl look up from a book and change the course of my life. I do not know if this letter will ever reach you. Maybe I will burn it. Maybe I will hide it like the coward I have often been. Maybe one day, when I am braver in death than I was in life, someone will place it in your hands. If that happens, please do not spend your sadness on the years we lost. I have already done that for both of us. Instead, know this. You were loved. Not briefly, not almost, not only in summer. You were loved in every city I lived in, every room I entered, every building I drew.
every quiet evening when the light turned gold, and I remembered your face. I used to think love had failed us because it was not enough to keep us together. Now I think perhaps I was wrong. Maybe love was enough. Maybe we were the ones who were too young to understand how to hold it. If I could return to one moment, it would not be the kiss in the rain or the night at the lighthouse. It would be that morning at the station. I would step off the train. I would run back through town. I would find you in the bookshop, frightened and alone. And I would say, I am here. We can be afraid together. That is what I should have said. That is what love deserved. So I am saying it now, too late and still true. I am here. In the house near the lighthouse. In the pages of your old letters. In the rain against the shop window. In every west-facing room I ever built. And if there is a place beyond this one, a place where time is kinder and trains do not leave too soon, I will wait there. Not proudly, not foolishly, just with my hand open, as I should have waited then. Always yours, Daniel. Amelia lowered the letter into her lap. Outside, the rain had softened to mist. The cottage was quiet, except for the ticking of an old clock somewhere in the hall. She did not cry at first. Some grief is too deep for tears to reach immediately. She sat on the floor with Daniel's letter in her hands, and felt 30 years rearrange themselves inside her. All the things she had believed became less certain. All the old pain changed shape. He had not forgotten. He had not stopped loving her. He had simply been young, proud, afraid, as she had been. The tragedy, she realized, was not that love had ended. It was that love had remained, quietly, on both sides of a silence. For 30 years, each had believed the other had chosen to let go. For 30 years, two hearts had lived like houses with lights on in separate towns, never knowing both were waiting. Amelia stayed in the cottage until evening. She opened the windows. She removed the sheets from the furniture. She found Daniel's letters in a tin box beneath the desk, tied with the same blue ribbon. Her letters, every one, carefully saved, soft from being opened again and again. In the kitchen drawer she found a key. Not the old lighthouse key, a newer one. Attached to it was a small tag in Daniel's handwriting, for the book room. Amelia searched the cottage until she found a narrow door beside the stairs. The key turned smoothly. Inside was a small room facing west. Shelves lined every wall. Empty shelves. Waiting shelves. A chair stood by the window. On the windowsill was a single dried wildflower pressed inside glass. Amelia remembered it. She had given it to Daniel one afternoon at the cliffs. A silly little flower, yellow and fragile, picked from the grass while they were walking. He had placed it behind his ear to make her laugh. He had kept that, too. The next morning, Amelia returned to the bookshop. For the first time in years, it felt smaller than she remembered, not because she loved it less, but because something in her had opened. She placed Daniel's letter in the window beside the old poetry books. Not all of it, only the final line, copied in her own hand on a small card. If there is a place where time is kinder, I will wait there with my hand open. Customers asked about it. Amelia would smile and say, "It belongs to an old story." And that was true. Spring came slowly that year.
Amelia began restoring the white cottage. She did not change it too much. She liked its quiet sadness. She only gave it warmth. Curtains, lamps, books, flowers in the wild garden, a kettle on the stove, a blanket on the chair in the west-facing room. Every evening she walked to the lighthouse. The first time she used the old brass key, though visitors were no longer supposed to enter after hours. The door opened with a familiar groan. The stairs still curved upward in darkness. The air still smelled of stone and salt. At the top, the town spread below her. The harbor, the church, the train station, the bookshop window glowing softly in the distance. Amelia stood where she and Daniel had once stood, young and terrified of losing each other. Then she took his letter from her coat pocket and read it aloud to the sea. Not because Daniel needed to hear it, but because she did. Months later, Amelia began writing again. Not shop accounts, not letters to suppliers. Real writing. She wrote about Rose, about Marrow Bay, about the bookshop, about the summer of 1991, about a boy who drew houses no one wanted to leave, about a girl who thought staying behind was the same as being good. She wrote slowly, by hand, at Daniel's desk. Sometimes she paused and looked at the rain. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she cried. But mostly, she felt grateful in a way that surprised her, because even though life had not given them the ending they wanted, it had given her the truth. And truth, when it finally arrives, is a kind of mercy. One evening, many years later, when Amelia was very old, a young woman came into the bookshop during a summer rain. She was looking for a book. "What kind?" Amelia asked. The young woman smiled shyly. "One that makes time slow down." Amelia looked at her for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the poetry shelf, and pulled down a worn blue book. "This one," she said. The young woman opened it carefully. Inside the cover, written in faded ink, were two names: Daniel Hart, Amelia Vale. And beneath them, in Amelia's handwriting, a single sentence: "Some love stories do not end. They become places." That night, Amelia sat by the window of the white cottage with the sea breathing softly beyond the dark. The west-facing room was full of books now. Every shelf, every corner. Stories gathered around her like old friends. On the desk lay Daniel's letter. The paper had grown fragile with time, but the words remained. "Always yours." Amelia touched them gently. Outside, rain began to fall. Not heavy rain, soft summer rain. The kind that makes the streets shine. The kind that turns the world into a secret. And in that quiet, between the sound of rain and the distant hush of the sea, Amelia closed her eyes and imagined a train station beyond time. No clocks, no departures, no 5 minutes lost forever. Only Daniel, standing beneath the golden light, no longer young, and yet somehow exactly as she remembered him, his dark hair touched by wind, his hand open, his smile gentle. This time, she was not late. This time there was no telephone call, no debt, no fear, no silence. Only the long platform, the soft sound of rain, and the boy who had waited all her life inside a letter never sent. Amelia smiled in her sleep. And somewhere, In the peaceful place where all unfinished love is finally understood, Daniel took her hand. Because sometimes love is not enough to save a life from sorrow. Sometimes love is not enough to stop a train, or heal pride, or teach two young hearts how to speak before silence grows too wide. But sometimes love is enough to remain, enough to wait, enough to turn an empty house into a home, enough to give meaning to every year that seemed lost, enough to whisper, even after a lifetime, I was here, I loved you, and I never truly left. The end. Thank you for listening to tonight's sleep story. Rest gently, breathe slowly, and let this quiet love stay with you as you drift into sleep. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more relaxing bedtime stories, nostalgic love stories, and peaceful tales for the heart.